Today I will be teaching you guys about the history of skateboarding. So, skateboarding started in the 1950s when surfers were looking for a way to bring their sport out into the streets. It mostly sprung up out of California and Hawaii, which were like the big surf spots. And originally a skateboard was a 2x4 that had a broken roller skate attached to the bottom so that it could roll. Originally there wasn't really tricks in skateboarding as much as it was steep turns, which was known as carving at the time. This was mostly done in hills or like abandoned ditches. And just to give you guys an idea, this is a roller derby skateboard, which is, just a 2x4 with a graphic on the top. And they would attach broken roller skates to the bottom so it could roll. Alright, so tricks didn't really start up until about the 60s, and with tricks getting popular, this allowed for teams to start forming, and companies started putting out skateboards, and they would actually sponsor people so that they could ride for them. And one of the biggest innovations in skateboarding as a whole was Cadillac wheels in the 1960s. They came out with a skateboard wheel that was urethane, so skateboarders could roll faster, longer. Because before that, wheels were made out of metal, and metal on concrete just doesn't roll that fast. So when urethane wheels came out, skateboarding was able to move into different areas. So people started skating in pools. They would just ride up the walls of abandoned pools. And another thing that was implemented, I have a 70 skateboard right here. It was the first time they utilized the tail, which is like this slight bend up. So skateboarders can now like lift up the front of the skateboard and they can pop it up to themselves. In the 80s, skateboarding sort of developed more, and there's two forms of skateboarding now. So there's freestyle skateboarding, and there's vert skating, which is skating on ramps that were 90 degrees, and so they were vertical. So that's what vert is short for. And those were the two main styles. And in the 80s, the ollie was invented by Rodney Mullen. And now that an ollie is when you pop a board up and lift it, so you could actually move in the air. And before the 80s, that wasn't around, so that opened up a whole new world of tricks. Whoa, technical difficulties. That opened up a whole new realm of tricks, and tricks started to get bigger and bigger. Another thing that happened in the 80s was skateboarding started to become more popular. The two main parts where skateboarding was really spreading was in Germany and the US. And in the 80s, Thrashers opened up, which is it's now more of a popular culture company, but they're a big skateboarding magazine. And another thing that sort of like differentiated the 80s from other decades in skateboarding is there was different shapes that were coming out with the board. So normally once someone became professional, they would design a shape that was to their liking. So this is an 80s skateboard. This is the Rob Roscop shape. It's called a fishtail. But it's like most of the skateboards in the 70s, they were all generally this shape, but in the 80s, they all had different shapes, and this is just one of them. So after the 80s, with the invention of the ollie in freestyle skateboarding, there was a whole new realm of tricks. So freestyle sort of became obsolete, and skateboarders started skating natural obstacles that were in cities. So freestyle pretty much turned into street skateboarding, which is just skateboarding amongst the streets. And another thing is vert became televised, so that started opening new competitions such as the X Games, And that also was what made Tony Hawk, the skateboarder everybody knows, he became, like, he was in his peak at this time. And he did the first 900 on a skateboard, and he also released a bunch of video games which helped make skateboarding more popular. And in the 90s, since there were more companies coming out, skateboarding became easier to get, skateboards became easier to get, so more people could get into skateboarding. So this is an example of a 90s board, and the thing you'll notice is that there's an even tail and the front part, which is a nose, so people could pretty much pop on either end rather than just having one edge. But this is an example of a skateboard in the 90s. So now skateboarding is pretty much bigger than it has ever been. Social media has really helped because people are able to share their skateboarding, and more people are able to watch skateboarding happen. Another thing that has like really helped with skateboarding is skateboarding has sort of become fashionable. A lot of like high-end companies are putting skateboarding into their fashion lines. So Vogue does a fashion week now. Supreme, a skateboard company, is like a high fashion brand. So that has sort of like made people want to skateboard. And skateboarding has actually become so big that it will be in the 2020 Olympics next year. So we'll see where skateboarding goes from then. Yeah.